My name is Adesua. I used to believe that beauty was the only key to love, until life showed me that real love doesn't live in the skin, it lives in the soul. I was born in a small African town where everyone knew everyone. My skin was smooth and dark like cocoa when I was young, but when I turned 13, strange white patches began to spread across my body. The doctors called it vitiligo. The villagers called it a curse. They said my mother offended the spirits. Some people refused to touch me. Some children ran when they saw me. Even at school, I became invisible, the kind of invisible that hurts. But this story isn't about how I broke. It's about how I became unbreakable. The first time I met Daniel, I was 21. I was cleaning tables in a small cafe in Busan, where I worked after moving to South Korea for a better life. He was a tourist from the US, with messy blonde hair and a smile that looked like sunlight. He asked me for directions to a museum, and I remember covering my hands with gloves, afraid he might stare at my skin. But he didn't. He looked right into my eyes. That night, I went home replaying his voice. "Thank you, Adesua." I didn't know that simple sentence would one day change my entire life. Days passed. Daniel came again, this time just to talk. He said he loved the way I spoke, slow and soft, like someone who listens more than she talks. We started meeting every evening after my shift. He'd tell me stories about his travels, and I'd tell him about my little brother back in Nigeria. But every time he tried to hold my hand, I pulled away. One day, he asked, "Adesua, why do you always hide your skin?" I told him the truth. Because people don't like what they don't understand. He said then, they don't deserve to see what's beautiful. That night, for the first time in years, I took off my gloves. We became inseparable. But love doesn't stop the world from judging. When Daniel told his friends he was dating me, they laughed. Some called me the spotted girl. One even said I was with him for papers. Daniel defended me, but each word they said cut deeper than a knife. At the cafe, customers whispered behind my back. A woman once said, "She should wear long sleeves, it's disturbing." I went home crying that night, staring at my reflection. My skin looked like a broken map, patches of brown, white, and pale pink. I wanted to scrape it all off, but Daniel held my face and said, "Adesua, your skin tells a story. Don't hide your story." And just like that, love started healing what medicine couldn't. Daniel proposed a year later on our anniversary. I said yes, crying like the rain. But when I told my family, silence filled the phone. My mother said, "You will marry a white man? What do you know of his people?" And Daniel's parents, they weren't happy either. His mother told him, "She's not your kind." We got married anyway, in a small church with only 5 people attending. My best friend, the pastor, and a few strangers who happened to walk by. It wasn't the wedding of my dreams, but when he kissed me, I knew it was real. After marriage, things weren't easy. People stared when we walked on the street. In restaurants, waiters looked confused, wondering what a man like him was doing with a woman like me. I pretended not to notice, but Daniel did. He'd hold my hand tighter every time. One night, I asked him, "Do you ever regret loving me?" He looked at me like I had asked if he regretted breathing. He said, "Adesua, loving you is the only thing that ever made sense in my life." I smiled, but deep inside, I was still fighting the mirror. The skin disease spread faster after I got pregnant. Stress made it worse. My body looked like paint splashed on canvas, uneven and strange. When I gave birth to our daughter, Hannah, she was perfect. Brown eyes like mine and soft skin like Daniel's. But when people saw her, they'd ask, "Is she really yours?" Sometimes mothers pulled their children away from me at the playground. I pretended not to care, but every time it happened, I'd cry in the shower. Daniel would come in, wrap a towel around me and say, "You don't need to look like anyone else to be loved." Years passed. I started writing online about my condition, sharing pictures of my skin and my story. Some people sent love, but others sent hate, cruel comments like, "Why would anyone love that?" One day, a message came from a young girl named Sujin. She said she also had vitiligo and had tried to bleach her skin. She wrote, "You made me stop." That day, I realized something. Maybe my pain wasn't just mine. Maybe it was meant to help others heal. Then, one afternoon, while Daniel and I were walking home, someone threw a drink at me from a car. It splashed across my face. They shouted, "Go back to your country, ugly!" Daniel ran after the car, but they sped away. I just stood there, wet, shaking, and broken. He turned to me, his eyes full of fire. "Adesua, I'm sorry for this world." I said softly, "Don't be sorry, Daniel. Just keep loving me. That's enough." He hugged me in the middle of the street while people stared, and for once I didn't care. But love doesn't protect you from everything. A year later, Daniel fell sick. Cancer, they said. Fast and cruel. I spent nights beside him in the hospital, holding his hand, the same hand that once held mine when the world looked away. He looked weak, but he still smiled. "Adesua, promise me you'll never hide again." I cried and said, "I promise." That was the last thing he heard before he slept forever. I thought my world ended that day, but something strange happened. At Daniel's funeral, hundreds of people came. People from the cafe, students, strangers online, even those who once insulted me. They came to say, "We were wrong. You showed us what real love looks like." As I stood there, I realized Daniel didn't just love me. He taught others how to love beyond skin. And that was the day my healing truly began. After Daniel's death, the world became quiet. Too quiet. I'd wake up and reach for his side of the bed, cold, empty, gone. The coffee cup he used still sat on the counter. His scent lingered on the pillow, like memory refusing to fade. For weeks, I couldn't look in the mirror. My skin reminded me of him. He used to trace my patches with his fingers, calling them maps of heaven. Now, without him, they just looked like scars. People told me to move on. But how do you move on from the only person who ever saw your soul? Months later, I went back to the cafe where we first met. The manager, Mr. Lee, smiled when he saw me. "Adesua," he said softly. "The same seat?" I nodded. I sat there watching the sunlight through the window. I could almost hear Daniel's laugh. I smiled to myself, whispering, "You'd probably tell me to stop crying and start living." That evening, I posted a picture of my hands on social media. No gloves, no filters, just me. I wrote, "He loved me when I couldn't love myself. So today, I start again." By morning, the post had gone viral. Thousands of comments. People wrote, "Thank you for your courage." Some even said, "Your story made me forgive myself." For the first time in a long time, I felt light again. Life started changing slowly. A Korean TV station invited me for an interview. They called it "The Beauty of Difference." I was nervous. My heart pounded as they put a microphone on me. The host asked, "Adesua, do you still believe in love after losing Daniel?" I smiled softly. Yes, because love didn't die. It just changed its shape. The video spread everywhere. Suddenly, people recognized me on the street. Some said, "You're the woman who talks about love." But not everyone was kind. Some still whispered, "She's using her disease for fame." Those words still hurt, but Daniel's voice echoed in my head. Don't hide your story. So, I kept sharing it. One day, I was invited to speak at a school. A little boy came up to me after the talk. He had burn scars on his arms. He said quietly, "I don't like showing my hands." I knelt and held his hands in mine. "Do you know what makes you special?" I asked. He shook his head. You survived, and surviving is beautiful." He smiled. That moment healed a part of me I didn't know was still broken. Still, nights were hard. I'd wake up from dreams of Daniel calling my name. I'd sit on the balcony, watching the city lights, whispering stories to the wind. I started writing a book about love, pain, and healing. Every word felt like a piece of Daniel living again through my pen. One night, while typing, I saw a butterfly land on the window. White wings with brown dots, the same colors as my skin. I smiled and said, "You found me again, didn't you, Daniel?" Months turned into years. Hannah, our daughter, grew into a curious, gentle girl. One day, she came home crying. "Mom," she said, "the kids at school called you names. They said your skin looks dirty." I knelt beside her, tears filling my eyes. "Do you think Mommy's skin is dirty?" She shook her head. "No, it's special, like a painting." I hugged her tight. "Then don't let anyone tell you otherwise." That night, I told her stories of how her father loved me, how he used to kiss every patch on my skin, saying, "If love had a color, it would look like you." But as Hannah grew older, I noticed her trying to hide me from her friends. She'd tell them, "My mom is busy," even when I wasn't. One day I asked, "Hannah, are you ashamed of me?" She froze, then burst into tears. "I'm not ashamed, Mom. I just don't want people to laugh at you." I pulled her close. "Let them laugh, my child. People laughed at me all my life, but love always wins at the end." She nodded, and for the first time, she held my hand in public. Years later, I was invited to speak at a big international women's conference. I told my story again, but this time with pride instead of pain. I said, "Sometimes God uses broken things to show His strongest light. My skin was my curse. Now it's my crown." The audience stood and clapped. I cried, but they weren't tears of sadness. They were tears of freedom. When I got off the stage, a woman from the back came to me. She said, "My daughter has the same condition. She used to hide, but after watching your videos, she wears short sleeves now." I smiled. Tell her she's beautiful, not in spite of it, but because of it. As the years went by, I started an organization called Colors of Courage. It helped women with skin conditions find confidence, jobs, and community. But fame came with more hate, too. Some people online wrote lies, saying I faked my story for attention. One day, I almost deleted everything. Then Hannah said, "Mom, you always told me love wins. Why are you giving up now?" She was right. I took a deep breath and typed my next post. They can insult my skin, but they can't erase my heart. It went viral again. Millions shared it. Even celebrities quoted it. Through all this, I never remarried. Not because I didn't meet anyone, but because Daniel's love wasn't something you replace. It was something you grow from. One night, as I looked at our old wedding photo, I whispered, "Thank you for teaching me how to be seen." I smiled, touched the white patch on my cheek, and realized something beautiful. It no longer looked like a scar. It looked like light. And That's what love really is. Years passed, and my hair began to turn silver, just like the moon that once watched over me and Daniel. Hannah went to university to study medicine. She told me she wanted to become a dermatologist, to help people like you, Mom. I smiled. You're already helping me just by being my daughter. Our bond grew stronger, deeper, more beautiful than before. Every time she looked at me, I saw Daniel's eyes staring back. Calm, kind, full of light. But one evening when I went for a checkup, the doctor frowned at my reports. Adesua, we found something in your lungs, he said carefully. Cancer. The same word that took Daniel away. At first, I thought it was a mistake. I laughed it off. Not me, I said. I've already suffered enough. But pain doesn't take turns. It just arrives when it wants. That night, I sat on my bed, staring at the old picture of Daniel and me. I whispered, Daniel, you didn't tell me it hurts this much to say goodbye twice. I didn't cry for long. I'd already learned that tears can't fix what life decides. Instead, I decided to live, truly live with whatever days I had left. I told no one at first, not even Hannah. I continued working at Colors of Courage, helping women, smiling in interviews, pretending everything was fine. But inside, I could feel my body changing. The mirror showed a thinner me. The white patches glowed, brighter, almost like they knew time was short. One morning, while filming a video for my followers, I fainted. When I woke up in the hospital, Hannah was there, eyes swollen from crying. Mom, she whispered, why didn't you tell me? I held her hand. Because I didn't want you to stop living for me. She refused to leave my side after that. Every night, she read me my own book, the one I'd written years ago. One chapter said, true love is not when someone stays because you're perfect, but when they stay because you're worth it. She looked at me and said, that's you, Mom. You're worth it. I smiled weakly. And so are you. As my strength faded, people from all over the world began sending messages. Some said, you saved me. Others said, your story made me believe in love again. Hospitals felt less cold with all that love pouring in. Nurses printed the messages and hung them around my bed. It was like being wrapped in words instead of blankets. Sometimes I'd close my eyes and imagine Daniel walking through that door, still smiling, still saying, hey, beautiful. And maybe, deep inside, I felt him near. One evening, Hannah played one of Daniel's old voice messages. He said, if you're hearing this, it means I'm not around anymore, but promise me you'll never forget to laugh. And tell our daughter that her mom is the most beautiful woman in the world. I laughed through tears. Daniel, you always knew how to make me cry and smile at the same time. That night, I slept peacefully for the first time in months. The next morning, I woke up to sunlight dancing across my wall. I felt warm, calm, and strangely happy. I told Hannah, let's go to the garden. She helped me to my wheelchair. We sat under the cherry blossom tree, the same kind Daniel had proposed under. I closed my eyes and felt the breeze. You know, Hannah, I said softly, your father once said love never dies. I think I'm starting to understand. She held my hand tighter. "Don't go, Mom." I smiled. "I'm not going. I'm just changing places." That night, I didn't wake up again. But this isn't where my story ends. When Hannah stood to speak at my funeral, her voice was steady, clear, and full of love. She said, "My mother taught me that beauty is not in the skin, it's in the story behind it. She was called ugly by the world, yet she made the world see beauty again." People cried. Some even laughed softly, remembering my jokes from interviews. And as they laid me beside Daniel, the wind blew gently, carrying cherry blossom petals over my grave, white and brown, just like my skin. Months after my passing, colors of courage grew bigger than ever. Hannah became its new leader. She opened new branches across Africa and Asia, helping women love their skin, no matter what it looked like. One day, she stood on a big stage and said, "This is for my mother, Adesua, the woman who turned pain into power." The crowd stood up and clapped, and in that moment, somewhere beyond the sky, I knew Daniel and I were smiling together. Years later, Hannah published my diary as a book called "The Woman the World Tried to Hide." It became a bestseller. Readers said they cried, they healed, they found courage again. Somewhere in that book, there's a small line I wrote long ago. Maybe the reason God gave me skin that changes color was to remind people that love doesn't come in one shade. That line went viral, printed on posters, quoted in weddings, even painted on walls in schools. And just like that, my story kept living. People often say death is the end, but I believe love is a circle. What we give out comes back, maybe in another face, another time, another life. Sometimes when Hannah walks through a crowd, she hears someone whisper, "She looks just like that woman from the videos." And she smiles, replying, "That woman was my mother." Maybe that's what heaven feels like. Not clouds or angels, but knowing that your love still moves on earth, touching lives you'll never meet. And maybe, if you ever see someone walking proudly with skin like mine, patches of light and brown, smile at them, because that's my story walking by. My name is Adesua. I had a skin disease the world mocked, but a man named Daniel loved me so much that I learned to love myself too. And now, even though my body is gone, my story still lives in every person who dares to love beyond what the eyes can see. Because love, my dear, love never dies. Please like, subscribe, comment, and share.